Welcome everybody to the 6 p.m. council meeting of June 14th, 2022. Let the roll call reflect that all council members are present. I'll defer to Vice Chair Lopez for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please consider joining us for a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is acknowledgements. Today we're going to be acknowledging Juneteenth, which certainly wouldn't be acknowledged or possible in our own community or celebrated the way that we do without our own Betty Sawyer, who we're also here to recognize today. Betty, is there anything you wanted to say about Juneteenth before we move to your recognition?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hello.
Betty Sawyer,
Good to see you.
co-founder, director, Project Success Coalition, and having the pleasure of leading our Utah Juneteenth Freedom and Heritage Festival for the past 32 years. This will be number 33. And just sharing our sincere appreciation for the support we've had with Ogden City for these 33 years. This morning we had a flag raising with Mayor Mendenhall in Salt Lake, and someone had asked about how this all began. And I was introduced to Juneteenth by the late Lenoris Bush, who was vice president of the Salt Lake NAACP. And he invited me to come out, so I went out and celebrated the first one. And the next year, he invited me to be on their committee. At the time, I was serving as the director of the Governor's Office of Black Affairs. And so we were part of this planning committee, and 2 weeks prior to Juneteenth, the persons that were in charge of the facility came back and reported that they had forgotten to reserve a park. And there was no park available anywhere in Salt Lake City. And they were going to cancel the event. And I'm like, wait a minute, you can't just cancel Juneteenth. It's going to happen whether we do anything or not. I said, give me a day or two. Let me call my friend in Ogden. So I called up Maurice White, who is the director of the Marshall White Community Center. I said, Maurice, I'm desperate. I need somewhere to have this event. Can we come up to Ogden? And he said, sure, come on up. And so those were our humble beginnings here in Ogden. And of course, with 2 weeks, it was, what are we going to do for a stage? What are we going to do? And we found a flatbed truck and wheeled it onto the grass at the center for our stage. And I have a photograph with another young man holding the umbrella over one of our performers on stage, Miss Zenobia Smith, who is a native of Ogden. And she's a gospel singer in Kansas City. And she has come back every year to be a part of this event and to connect with her roots and just grace us with her presence. And so as we celebrate Juneteenth this year, our theme is Juneteenth Fathers of Freedom. And this one was set by our national board, the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation, to honor those Blacks that have served in the military even before we were the United States that we are today, in every war since then. And so we're honoring our veterans as well as current military officers and members, and let them know how proud we are of the role that they played. And it was what they called at the time the U.S. colored troops came with General Gordon Granger, to Galveston, Texas, to make sure that those that were still held in bondage were set free, and delivered General Order Number 3. And so there were over 17,000 colored troops that were with Gordon Granger at that time, and there was another 179, we're told, colored troops that were in the Texas area at that time. So Again, we're glad to be here. We appreciate all of your support, Mayor and City Council. And this weekend, we will be doing our celebration at the Ogden Amphitheater. And we hope to see all of you, if not most of you there. We received word a couple of days ago that our governor will grace us. Governor Cox will be here to help us kick off this event, and he's been extremely supportive of the work that we've been doing as well, along with their Multicultural Affairs Office. So thank you, and we look forward to having you join us.
Betty, could you just tell us the time? You already told us the place. Give us a time.
We kick off at noon on Saturday and Sunday. And so Governor Cox will be there on Saturday around 2 o'clock. And so I'm hoping we'll have someone
I'll be there.
representing along with the governor. And we have invited both of the representatives, well, Senator Andrick and Sandra Hollins, Representative Hollins, to join us as well. And we're sending out that invitation to all of our elected officials because what happened this past legislative session with Juneteenth being passed was very monumental in a time when who knew what would happen. We were able to get Juneteenth passed, an ethnic studies bill passed, along with Izzy's bill to address bullying in our schools. So Representative Hollins had a quite successful legislative session, but it was done with everyone, bipartisan support all the way across the board. So thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Okay, we'll continue on our agenda of Betty Sawyer. Sorry, you're next on the agenda as well. So next item on our agenda is recognitions, and we'll be recognizing Betty Sawyer for her invaluable contributions to our community. And Councilmember Chaburka has asked to read this recognition for us.
Yeah, nothing I would rather do, that's for sure. And the Ogden City Council and Mayor proudly recognize Betty Sawyer for her contributions to the Ogden community and state of Utah. A lifetime advocate for marginalized groups, Betty Sawyer works tirelessly to build the community and bring people together. She cares deeply about others and is a strong proponent of freedom, justice, and equality. Betty is heavily involved in the Ogden community, and that's putting it lightly. She is the executive director of the Project Success Coalition and the Utah Juneteenth Freedom and Heritage Festival, is president of the Ogden chapter of the NAACP, the retired community engagement coordinator in access and diversity at Weber State University, and served on the Ogden City's Diversity Commission for many years. Plus helping form it, right? For more than 3 decades, Betty was a driving force behind the effort to make Juneteenth a state and federal holiday, which will be recognized as such for the first time this year. She has helped organize annual events and activities to celebrate the day and has worked with lawmakers to push for legislation to raise awareness of the holiday and its meaning. We are grateful for Betty's influence in Ogden City and throughout the state of Utah. Her contributions to our community are invaluable, and we know she will continue to do many great things for years to come. This is presented this 14th day of June, 2022, by the Council Chair, Ben Nadolski, and also Mayor Mike P. Caldwell. For you, Betty.
Come on up first.
Come on up.
Get a present.
Add to your wall.
Our many accomplishments.
We're gonna get a picture of you too. Okay. But you know the routine.
She knows.
Not her first
Mayor.
rodeo.
Yeah.
Do you have any friends that you'd like to have join you?
Come on up. The Turners, they're lifelong, been in Ogden a long time, doing a lot of good work. Susie, come on up.
Come on up and be in the picture.
We're all going to join in today.
3. I went a little early. Sorry. 1, 2, 3. There we go. 1, 2, 3. We're good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
May I make a quick comment? Oh, well, she's going to speak. You go first.
No, I was just going to say thank you since I've already talked to get this meeting going.
Well, obviously, just so admire all the work you've done, Betty, and I hope that just a very small fraction of what you've done I can accomplish in my lifetime, that's for sure. I also just want to say how proud I am of the city administration for actually making Juneteenth a holiday for the Ogden City employees, which is really awesome that they immediately did that.
I think that deserves,
Yeah, very cool.
because that's something that we're still working on. We've reached out to a couple of our municipalities, and Mayor, that's a conversation we can have because I know you're still in leadership in that arena, how we can encourage others to do the same thing, to follow suit in recognizing the holiday and working to make sure that their employees have an opportunity to engage in some of these activities that we're having. And there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And the work that I've done, the only reason I've been successful is the fact that I've always had a strong group of people around me, including my family and friends. And Lucretia has been a part of this journey probably the whole 33 years. So we're just glad to see it all come together at this time in this place, and to know that Ogden City is helping lead the way in Juneteenth. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty.
Thanks, Betty.
Okay. Thanks, Angela, for reading that for us. Next item on our agenda is public hearings.
Chair, can I just say something?
Yeah, of course. Sorry. Go ahead.
And I'm going to try and get this out as best as I can, but it's been made known throughout today that I'm now the longest tenured council member. So I've got the opportunity and the privilege of getting to know Betty very, very well through, like was mentioned, the many, many wonderful things that she does. And over my time here, sitting up here and listening to these wonderful things that Betty brings to our community, I think the story she relayed earlier just typifies the type of person that she is. She gets in, somebody made a mistake, right? Somebody didn't plan, or somebody didn't reserve a park. And I'm sure a lot of people would have finger pointed and said, oh, that person didn't do their job. But in all of my experiences with Betty, she's never once finger pointed. She's never once blamed somebody. She's just jumped in, said, what do we need done? And I'll get it done. And I respect and just admire that trait from Betty. Not only does she get it done, some people see a task and think that's too big of a task. She threw together a party on a whim, a party that's still going in our community. And there are so many similarities from that story to the way I picture you and the way I see you, Betty, in our community. So I just want to thank you, not only for all that you do, but truly the remarkable way that you do it. And our community is truly blessed to have you in it. And I just appreciate everything that you do. And this couldn't have come at a better time, and it's not more deserving than for anyone than you. But thank you so much.
That was well said, and you just can't speak that well without that much experience. Bart.
Yeah, that's what it is.
No, thanks.
Yep.
Very, very good points. Okay, first item on our agenda for the public hearings is fiscal year 2021-2022 budget amendment, SWIFT environmental costs. I believe will be spoken to by Lisa Stout. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Council Chair, Council members. Appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. Budget action that we're asking you to consider is an appropriation out of the general fund, out of the BDO lease revenue to be transferred to the redevelopment agency to be used at the SWIFT site for additional soil remediation and other work required there. Just a quick history of where we're at on the SWIFT site. Originally, we appropriated just over $2.2 million. And then with additional appropriations in fiscal year 20 of just over $2 million, $2.1 million. Those funds have been spent on the property itself, asbestos and other remediation work, and then site and demo work, including work to protect the river from environmental issues found out there. There are funds currently remaining in the BDO lease revenue. We're asking council to appropriate fund balance out of BDO of just over $2 million to transfer to the redevelopment agency. Later, we will be asking the RDA board to recognize that transfer in and appropriate it to additional work at the SWIFT site. Any additional questions?
Questions for Lisa? Is Brandon behind the column or something somewhere? I see his hand. I have a question. This has been one of those, you and I have talked about it. It's hard to keep putting money into this one. But
Yeah.
What would happen if we didn't pass this today?
Well, we would essentially leave the river in a precarious situation, given all that we know is adjacent to it. There is still more work to be done after this. This gets us to a point where the worst is behind us with the leaking underground storage tank and the access to the river and those kind of things. Going forward, there is the opportunity to maybe take a step back and look at the remediation on the remainder of the parcel in a more manageable way, maybe over additional fiscal years or a different time frame that we've taken up to this point. This time frame has been driven by the existing conditions and the state and their regulations under the voluntary cleanup program. So if we did nothing, we would be rendering the work that we've done to this point kind of obsolete. We'd be still in jeopardy. But going forward, I think we can be a little bit more tempered in our approach.
Thanks. So the East River Bank's been stabilized, right? Mm-hmm. There's boulders along the toe where the shear stress is highest. The bank has been sloped at bank full to allow for bank full flows and so on. I think the river channel is okay.
Right.
But it's the outside of that area.
That's right.
Is where you're concerned?
That's right.
Okay. Thanks. This struggle for me. So thanks.
I get it. Thank you.
Yep. Any questions for Brandon while we go? Sorry. Okay. Thanks. Okay. This is a public hearing. So if anybody in the public cares to address the council on this particular item, the SWIFT environmental costs, this is your opportunity to do so. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name for the record. Welcome, Angel.
Good evening. Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. We're in a odd place with the whole remediation. I know everybody did what had to be done. And while I believe that you probably have to pass this, I'd really like you to examine the process of how you got here and how we can change this process so that it doesn't continue to happen again. When our own fire department chief refused to tackle any fires on that property, we had an obligation as a city to make sure that we knew what was going on, to pull business operation permits, to send in building inspectors. We cannot continue to do things the way that we've been doing them. We're no longer a city of 20,000 people. We are a city of almost 90,000, and we're growing rapidly, and we have an amazing amount of things to offer businesses and residents. So while I would like to be fiscally responsible and say not to do this, you probably have to, and that's up to you and to talk to other folks, but I'd really like you to consider how we got here and how we can change this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. Anyone else in the chambers care to speak to this item? Oh. Welcome.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicholas Attillo, Ogden resident. I served in the military, and one of my assignments was to manage programs for the government. And so we would develop new weapons technology, new aircraft, training systems. And as a project manager, my job was to manage the cost, schedule, and performance of every program. So at the beginning of every program, I knew what was going to be spent, when it was going to be spent, and when it was going to be over. The difference between a project and ongoing operations is that a project has a clearly defined scope and a beginning and an end. And so, my question to the board, the question here would be, when does it stop? When does the spending on this project stop? What are the goals that are trying to be accomplished here? And when do the residents of the city know that even if the job doesn't get done, we've exceeded our cost, we've exceeded our schedule requirements, and the project gets shut down? We shut down a lot of good projects in the government, in the federal government, that just weren't getting fielded on time, or we're spending too much money, because at the end of the day, there is a finite amount of resources. And so I understand that there are some environmental concerns, safety concerns with this site, with this project, but the power of the purse belongs to the legislative body, and you guys get to send a message and say enough is enough. If a project is mismanaged, or if a project is not clearly defined from the beginning, you get to pull the plug on it and send somebody back to the drawing board to find a more effective solution. And so with that, I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
What did you say your name was again?
Nicholas Attillo.
Italo?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't know you, but you're a smart dude. Thanks. Okay. Anyone else in the chambers before we go to online? Okay. Go to online. We got one hand raised. Brandon, you good? Oh, we'll go to Heath Sato, and then I think we got one more in the chambers. Go ahead, Heath, whenever you're ready, bud. Heath, you good? We'll give Heath a chance. We got one more commenter in person. Let's give Heath a minute to catch up on bandwidth or whatever. Let's bring you on up. Did you want to speak? Sorry, not forcing you. I just saw you
No problem.
gesture like you wanted to.
I'm Wilson Tolman. I live at 425 Canyon Road. I'd like to talk about our initiative that we're considering and renewable energy. We need to be also far visionary in our planning and preparing, and that we ought to consider that the next bus rapid transit will probably be up and down Washington Boulevard.
Sorry, is this related to the SWIFT?
No.
Environmental? Okay.
I see on here it says Eddie's topic.
Sorry, we're on item number 4. When we get to item
I'm sorry.
5. Nope, you're okay. No problem.
I said what I want to say.
Well, you can say it again here when we get to 6, okay? And trust me, we all say the wrong things at the wrong times. We're all human. Okay, let's try Heath. You still there?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, buddy. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry about that. I accidentally unplugged my mic. I just wanted to add on to Angel's comments that there was one of the first fires was in 2008. What is that? 14 years now. That burned 3 floors, exploded ammunition, and a second fire, as you know, in 2014. And after that, the fire chief said they're not ever going to fight another fire there. And I just have to wonder if the expenses we're seeing now could have been a lot less had we dealt with this sooner, rather than allowing the situation there to just get worse and worse and worse and become a greater and greater risk to our community. And if there's no way to inspect a building or condemn it or deal with something like this after 2 fires that are so bad that the fire department won't come near it again. Is there a policy change we can make that would help this sort of situation in the future? Because it's a little scary that situation sat there for just decades and nobody knew what was going on, and now it's just costing us so much money. And I do have to remind you that the initial estimate given by Mr. Cooper, who stood there and spoke earlier, was $500,000 for the cleanup, while the EPA was estimating $2 million. So everybody was way off. I hope we can do better in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Heath. Okay, any others?
Chair, seeing no more movement. Seeing no more movement, I will make a motion that we close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Blair to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. Any questions or comments on this item from the council?
Chair, I continue to hope and wonder, and if we, Ogden did not cause that problem, and I don't know that, it is sort of the whack-a-mole of the current, we keep finding different things to have to spend money on, and Mr. Cooper made a comment months ago that I'm kind of hoping is true, and maybe our legal counsel can help us to understand, is there a method or a way that we can recoup our costs on some of these things by those who actually did cause the problem and contribute to it? And are we exploring how that might happen?
We are exploring how to get repaid on some things. By the same token, so it's a group of potentially responsible parties that we're working with. And of course, those parties also are trying to point the fingers at everybody else, including us as well. And so it's going to be a complicated negotiation that might be followed by litigation.
I assumed that's where it would end up. I just wondered if that was something we were pursuing. I hope that we do as vigorously as practicable. And I just want to reiterate again, I looking back at historically at what we found when we did finally open up the Pandora's lid, it was the right thing to do. We had to clean up that mess. That was going to be a disaster if we hadn't uncovered it and pursued what we did. It is just very unfortunate that it's worked out this way.
Thanks. For those following along, we sometimes like to ask our legal counsel questions just to make sure he's paying attention. He did good. I actually was going to ask the same question. Just a follow-up for me on that one, Gary. Do you have any sense for a timeline for that? I mean, are we talking years? I'm sure we're talking multiple years, but
It's just hard to tell. The EPA has asked us to meet with these PRPs, is what we call them, and try to come up with a joint resolution. And of course, the EPA, if those PRPs don't come up with a resolution, then the EPA is going to start asking all of us to pay it all and then have us work it out amongst ourselves in litigation. And so the EPA would hope to have us have a resolution by the end of the year, but that seems a little bit enthusiastic as far as timing goes. And so maybe sometime next year we might have some resolutions if we can come to a negotiated settlement.
okay, thanks. As unspecific as that was, it was actually quite specific.
But it's real. It's
good.
so much uncertainty.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, no, that's on my mind a lot. So wasn't asking for rhetorical sake. I really am wondering how much longer. So
Just to Chair, I think it would be good, if we approve this to have maybe another look at exactly what needs to happen still and have that plan so that we, I know that in the packet it indicates that there's expectation for additional funds, but what does that mean? So if we can maybe get Brandon to help us out on that, go back to the drawing board on figuring out what is still involved in this to finalize. I would really like to see that.
I agree. Brandon, is that something are you still behind the post?
He's over there. Thumbs up.
Is that something you can help us with maybe tonight? Or is that unknown or?
I wouldn't expect necessarily tonight if they would have that. If they did, that'd be great.
Can someone that can see Brandon from behind the post tell me? Thanks. I'm going to need you to take that seat on the far side. I'll sit there. Next. Thanks.
So we did reference, and I mentioned just a minute ago, future work that would be required to get to a full certificate of completion on the site, which is the state's determination that we've identified all of the potential contaminants and done enough of the work to remediate to their satisfaction. So that's the end goal, certificate of completion. We were successful in doing that just across the river at the trackline site. That took us almost 18 months to complete. It wasn't nearly as egregious as the SWIFT site, but we did complete that and received that kind of a certification from the state. Under the voluntary cleanup program, they regulate everything that we do. And that's part of why this process might be so confusing to people and why we can't say, here is the full scope of work across the entire project. This is the amount of money it's going to take, and this is the amount of time it's going to take, because everything is incremental. What they require us to do going forward is to sample the remainder of the site. So everything outside of the footprint of the building, we would bore a number of different borings to reach groundwater. We've already done 24 up to date, but they require us to do more. We don't know what's under the ground. All we know is that we are required to continue to bore. Once we receive the data on what we find in those borings, then we create a remedial action plan. That remedial action plan could consist of anything from hauling away dirt to groundwater monitoring over time to other remedial activities that are consistent with the constituents that are found. We don't know any of those things right now until we actually go out and do the additional boring. So we can't give an accurate budget to that, nor can we give an accurate schedule, because until we get to that point. That's why this project has been approached incrementally. We've always known the steps of what we needed to do, but we've never known the full scope nor the full budget, which is why it feels like we're coming back to you continually to ask for additional money. The budget was projected at the front end of this, but we did not know that we would have a leaking underground storage tank because it was underground and there was no evidence of it above ground. It was actually under a foundation of a building. So once we demolished the building and found the tank, we then found, after additional sampling that wasn't previously predicted, that it was leaking. And then we were able to ascertain the extent of that. So this has been an incremental process. I realize that it's frustrating and confusing. But again, if you look at the original notes from when we all decided to endeavor down this path, I think we understood collectively that that this was going to be something that we couldn't entirely predict, but we could at least walk through the steps together, and we did. We tried to predict some of that budget, and it has been much higher than we've expected it to be.
Assuming there's no surprises with those hole borings, is that the final step to get to the certificate of completion?
Right. So the next step is site characterization, which means to drill additional borings in places that the state agrees with and accepts. If there's a couple of scenarios that would take place. Number one, we find no evidence of contamination, and therefore there's no additional cleanup required, and we can move to close the site. Scenario number two would be we find various level of contamination through a number of constituents, and then we create remedial action plan to clean that up. Again, we won't know how many borings we need to do, nor do we know what they're going to produce until we actually get to that step.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Some of that did sound familiar from past presentations, so thank you.
We've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, thanks.
Chair,
anyone else?
I just make a motion if you're ready.
Sure.
I'd make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2022-27.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Chaburka to adopt proposed ordinance 2022-27. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair?
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka?
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Ritchie?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Vice Chair Lopez?
Aye.
Chair Nadolski?
I'll vote aye. Thanks. That passes. Any comments on that from any others?
Just, it's very regretful. Aye. Good.
Yeah, that's basically what I was going to say. I mean, I know the purchase of the property was before my time on the council, but I certainly have always agreed with the expense that we're going to, or the lengths we're going to remediate the situation. Not long after we made one of these decisions was the horrible explosion in Lebanon, right? It just made me think, what if, and obviously I'm so glad that we've never had to experience that here, but we wouldn't have known what could have happened in that situation if we would have let the situation lie the way it was. So I certainly, again, have the same feelings as everybody else, but I feel like we just have to remediate the situation. And the work that's been done on the river, if people haven't seen it, it is so beautiful and so much different than it ever has been before that I think that's also worth it too.
Mr.
Chair, if I could.
Sure can.
I just want to thank Brandon and your group for being willing to jump into a really sticky and muddy situation. We did not know what we were going to find in there, but we knew responsibly we couldn't kick the can down the road anymore. It would have been easy to ignore, and I know it's frustrating that we've come back a number of times to do things. The end bill on this isn't done yet. I mean, we have some legislative things we can do. We have a whole bunch of other things that we can do, but this was something that had been long ignored, has been mentioned by a lot of other people in the chamber. We weren't willing to do that, and these guys took a really heavy, difficult lift on the chin and knew that it was not going to be a pretty thing, but it was the right thing to do. And so I appreciate Brandon's one of the best brownfields people, but we did not know what we were going to get into when we got into that, but I think it was the right thing to do, and we'll absolutely stand by that. And I think we're not done yet with the financial part of this. Not that we're asking you for more money, but I think that we can get some of this remediated, and we're working hard on that. Well, I should say Gary's working hard on that. But it was absolutely the right thing to do. And I want to thank Brandon, and I want to thank you all for your patience as we've gone through this, because there was a lot in there that we had no idea about. Nobody on this dais had any idea what was going on in there, and it was just the right thing to do at the right time, and I've appreciated your patience and support, and we'll continue to work through that.
Thanks, Mayor.
Just want to echo the comments from the mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brandon.
I do too. I think the comments we heard from the public too are pretty consistent with a lot of how we've all felt along the way too. I think, we all wish we knew it was going to cost this much going into it. Every time this issue comes up for more costs, I keep putting myself in that chair at that same time and wonder what would I do if I knew about the total cost up to today. And I'll admit, this is another big chunk of money. And I'm getting at that point where I'm like, ugh. If I put myself back at that time, I don't know that I make the same call. That's where I'm at right now. But that said, if there's some relief out there to us for doing the right thing for the right reasons, I really hope it can come to fruition, because we absolutely have, and we've done it with tremendous cost and risked ourselves into the city budget. But no one ever likes to keep spending money if you don't have to. But we have an obligation to finish what we started. So thanks, Brandon. Okay. Next item before I'll introduce it, and then I need to make an announcement on it. The fiscal year 2021-22 budget amendment for storm sewer grants. I just want to say before we start the discussion that I'll be recusing myself from voting on this item. In my day job, I work for the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources, and one of the grants that we will be considering accepting in this opening is money from my employer. So I made a commitment to my employer and to the city that I would recuse myself from conflicts like this. And it just doesn't make sense to have a hand in writing the check and in cashing it. So I'll help run the meeting. I won't ask any questions or sway anybody's opinions or votes on it, but I will not be taking a vote myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, council members, for allowing me to be here tonight to with this proposed ordinance 2022-28 to appropriate funds in the storm sewer fund. The purpose for this is, as was mentioned by Chair Nadolski, is to recognize some grant funding that we received. We have two different sources. The first one is from the Dumpke Foundation in the amount of $160,000 to recognize that donation to be able to use at the kayak park. And then the second one is to recognize the Trout Unlimited wildlife grant, which is from the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources. So with those, and then along with that, in discussions with engineering, we have funds. We have two different CIPs in the storm fund. There's SU-079 and SU-078. SU-079 is specific to the Ogden River, and SU-078 is for both. And so after having discussions, there's still money there was still money in SU-079. And so we're recommending that we move those funds all into SU-078 so it can be used on both, for both rivers. And so the total amount, again, is that's just reappropriating funds from one project to another. So the total amount of this appropriation is $229,000, all of it going to SU-078 in the storm sewer fund. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions for Justin? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is also a public hearing, so if you care to address the council on this item, the storm sewer grants, please come to the mic, limit your comments to 3 minutes, and state your name for the record. Seeing no movement, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Chair, I'd make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Ritchie to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. Discussion or action on the item?
Chair, I'd make a motion then that we adopt ordinance 2022-28.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, seconded by Councilmember Chaburka to adopt proposed ordinance 2022-28. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lopez.
Aye.
Thank you. That passes.
Chair, can I just make a really quick comment?
You sure can.
You know, a lot of times we get scrutinized for maybe not applying for as many grants as we can. And, you know, this is just a small piece of some of the grants that we get. And so I wanted to reach out, and I don't know who applied for them, public services or, yeah, thanks, there's Jay. But thanks for doing that, because that goes a long way helping us. So thanks.
It's a good comment. I'd like to support your comment and say that now that we're done voting, my profession used to be, early in my career, used to be river restoration. And I had an opportunity to travel all around the country and learn about river restoration in communities and states all around the U.S. And one time I even backed up and ran into the mayor inadvertently at a monument in D.C. Remember that? I was out there for that training.
Jefferson.
Yeah. Anyway, small world story. But I share that because in the world of river restoration, there is no better city in the state of Utah, if not the country, than Ogden City. And that has a lot to do with everything to do with the engineers that are in charge. They care about our waterways. And That's why we have a $6 million restoration project in the Ogden River downtown. So you're 100% right, and the people that do this work, I really appreciate. Okay. Next item listed on our agenda is fiscal year 2021-2022 budget amendment for the Marshall White Center. Again, we'll bring up our Lisa Stout.
Thank you. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. The budget action we're asking council to consider is an appropriation of general fund general fund money to transfer to the CIP fund to appropriate for the construction design of the Marshall White Center. You've done a lot of work to get to where we're at, a lot of community involvement. This drawing is from a presentation from VCBO. This is not necessarily the final drawing. We need to appropriate this budget so that we can move forward with the construction plans so that we can better finalize the costs. And then there's still a lot of work to be done after this appropriation, just before we're even ready to put a shovel in the ground. This is a proposed look at what funding may look like for the Marshall White Center. Again, it will depend on donations and the final costs of the center. However, at this point in time, we're asking the council to appropriate $5 million. It's actually $5.4 million now in ARPA funds for the construction of the Marshall White Center. We're anticipating some capital donations. We're also going to apply for a legacy grant. We're hopeful that we'll get $1.5 million for that. And then once all of those sources have been investigated and secured, we will bond for the rest of the facility. The repayment source for that bond will be an appropriation from BDO lease revenue. We hope to line the bond up with about $1 million a year so that we can put that in ordinance, that transfer will happen to support that bond costs. However, tonight we are asking the council to appropriate $2 million out of the general fund balance to the CIP fund. Construction cost is based on, the construction design is based on a percentage of the final construction cost. So at this time, we're estimating it will be between $1.5 to $2 million. Any questions?
Questions for Lisa? Okay. Long time coming for this one. Okay, this also is a budget hearing. If anybody cares to address the council on this particular item, the Marshall White Center budget amendment, please come to the microphone, state your name, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hey, good evening. Jace Reineveld, Ogden City resident. I'd just like to express disagreement with spending this kind of money in the current financial environment of this country. It's nearly impossible to anticipate construction costs right now, with inflation being well over 10%. The commodities market is even worse. And so going into a project like this, when you're already proposing an additional $35 million to the budget, I think we can pause this and hopefully wait for a better time, because there's you're seeing it every day with the amount of stress that the country's going through. I think we'd probably be better off just standing by and waiting for the right time to do this kind of project. Thanks.
Thanks. Welcome back, Angel.
Good evening. Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. I'm excited that we're here, that we're finally moving forward. It's been a really long time coming. And there are a couple of things that I'd like you to consider as you move forward. The person commenting before me clearly doesn't understand that ARP money has an expiration date and that it's already allocated. And if we don't spend it, someone else will spend it. And we might as well do something for our community. So I fully support designating ARP funds. But I also think that you should really look into new market tax credits. This doesn't have to be a bond. There are plenty of, and if, Ken, if you don't understand, Councilman Ritchie, if you don't understand new market tax credits, which you might not because you're new, it's very similar to LIHTC, low-income housing tax credits, where an agency comes along, purchases the credit, and gives you a loan at 0% interest or below market rate interest. I know 2 tax syndicators that have carried projects just like this. There are 3 in Utah. And I think we owe it to our citizens to be as fiscally responsible as possible. And if we can avoid a bond and get 0 or below market rate loan on this, we don't necessarily need to ping our rating like that, and it will cost less over the long run. But I thank you for all the work that you've done on this, and it's been a long time, and I fully urge you to make sure that as we move forward in this process, if we run into snags for what things might cost or what they may not cost, that you codify a financial commitment to the Marshall White Center, just as you did earlier with the $5 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in person care to address the council on this item? I think we were kind of all waiting for you to move. So,
Good evening again, everyone. And I just want to share my support where we are. And, we've all been working on this for a long time and appreciate all of the work that has been done by all of you. And we're looking forward to this forward progress to be able to get to that end zone with a new facility that is very much needed in our community. So keep moving forward. We don't want you to stop yet. I know all of us, are concerned about finances and things of that nature. But the other part of that is I don't see anything getting any cheaper anytime sooner. So being able to continue the forward motion will be important for us at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Benny. Anyone else? Welcome back, Nicholas, right?
Thanks, Nicholas Till here back again. Don't know a whole lot about the project, but just sounds like, again, there's some contingent funds, I guess. They're asking for $25 million project, but they're asking the city for $5 million, and then the rest is supposed to come from other places. And so I understand that money expires. We dealt with that a lot, but it just seems like, the taxpayers are being asked to sign another blank check for another project when not all the parts and pieces are lined up and ready to execute. So if the money does have to get spent, I would suggest spending it on a project that's ready to execute now and not contingent upon grants or other things coming in at a later time that might not come through. And if it doesn't come through, then the residents of Ogden are going to be expected to pick up that bill, or we don't know how we're going to finish the project at that point. And so that just seems like an irresponsible financial decision from my perspective. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else in the chambers before we get to the online? Okay, seeing no movement, we'll go to Heath Sato online.
Thank you. Heath Sato again. I've been resident. Tonight is actually kind of perfect for this, as a couple of you shared your frustration in the work session with discussions being done in secret. And big thanks to you, Chair Nadolski, for your comments in particular, while others were supporting that secrecy. So on the issue of the Marshall White Center, I'm glad we were finally able to get some movement on this project, and I'm so glad it's happening, and I fully support moving forward. I do have some concerns, though, given that the chosen firm did not get any useful demographics when they did their survey to see if they got an accurate view of the needs of our community. The RFP specifically states that the chosen firm will use consideration of the profile of the community and demographics. To my knowledge, the only demographics taken were zip code. As Ogden has only 2 zip codes, I would hardly call that a fulfillment of this important requirement in the RFP. I would have liked to see this firm fulfill this requirement before moving forward with the design contract, but that time is likely past. Anyways, this led me to trying to find out who is accountable for the selection of this firm. But as I tried to find out how many firms applied for the RFP and who the committee was that chose this firm for a multi-million-dollar design contract, I came up with with very little. The entire statement on this election on the city's website says nothing about who the selection committee was and why they chose this firm over other firms and for what reason. The entire statement is this, quote, "The selection committee has provided a recommendation to award the contract for the above referenced project to the following firm, VCBO Architecture." That's it. If any of you know how many firms applied and who selected the winner, I'd love to know. I do hope VCBO will do a great job. I'm not dunking on them. I'm not saying they are not qualified, even though I don't see evidence that they've quite done a project like this exactly like this before. But I don't feel that citizens being asked to foot the bill for a multi-million-dollar contract should have to file a grammar request just to get these basic details. I have filed that request, and I hope to get those details soon in case none of you can answer that question. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Heath. Anyone else online or in person care to address the council on this item? Okay.
Chair, I'd move that we
there's
close.
another person online.
Yeah,
Oh, there is?
Oh,
Sorry.
thank you.
That was fast.
It was. Sorry, Alicia. Alicia Washington. Thank you for that.
Hi, everyone. Alicia Washington, Ogden City resident and cheerleader. I just want to say thank you for all the work that the Marshall White Advisory Committee has been putting into the Marshall White Center and providing transparent, really quick communication with city council members and city administration. And I also appreciate that city administration has been leaning on the Marshall White Advisory Committee to provide some of the answers that a few of the residents have made comments on, that they can go back and reach out to the Marshall White Advisory Committee to provide transparency for things that might be in question. So just wanted to hop on and say thank you for the hard work and diligence towards restoring and improving the Marshall White Center. Our community needs it. And like Miss Betty said, nothing's going to get cheaper anytime sooner. So now is the time. Thanks again for your hard work.
Thanks, Alicia. Okay. Is there anyone else online or in the chambers that cares to address the council on this item? And I'm going to pause for a minute before I look away.
Mr. Chair, I'm still watching, but I'm going to make the motion that we close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember White to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Discussion or action from the council.
Chair, I just have one question.
Yeah?
So, and maybe it might be Lisa that needs to answer this, but we're moving $4 million, but we're only needing the $1.5 million at this point. Is that correct? And I guess, oh, there you are. Is there a reason why we're doing it all at once?
So we're moving the $2 million because the design is based, the contract it's based on the construction costs. So I know there were still some residual questions about adding additional lanes. And so as that design work, the estimate is between $1.5 to $2 million, depending on what they end up doing to the building.
But we're putting $4 million to the project.
We're actually, the appropriation is for $4 million because we're dealing with two different funds. We have to recognize the transfer out of the general fund for $2 million and the transfer into the CIP fund for $2 million, making the total appropriation $4 million.
Thank you. I was confused.
Okay,
Thanks.
good question. Thank you.
Thanks for clearing that up. Any other questions or comments?
Chair, I'd love to make a motion to adopt proposed ordinance 2022-29.
I would love to second it.
Thank you. That was heartfelt.
Yep. No, that's why I'm here.
I have a motion by Councilmember Chaburka, second by Councilmember Blair to adopt proposed ordinance 2022-29. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Aye. Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye. That passes. thank you to all those that have been involved to get us to this point. We are far from complete, but I'll just say we've had a lot of disagreements. We have disagreements today. Disagreements happen. This is a project where we've had plenty of tension, but we have also had a lot of agreement moving forward. And I really appreciate the advisory committee, the folks in our community who have contributed to all of the input that we've gained, to members of the council and to the mayor and CAO and your staff for taking the desire to move forward so seriously. I think we're in a good place. We're not in the final place, but we're moving toward where we need to be. And I don't want to dismiss the comments about the fiscal sustainability. Frankly, I fancy myself a fiscal conservative. And if you've driven around Ogden, you've seen that we're doing projects like galore. I've gotten comfortable to the point where, in this city, we have to do projects no matter the cost of doing projects. There are some things that have to be done. This is one of those things that has had to be done for a long time. It needs to continue to be done. If we get to a point where we need to bond or borrow or find funds, and this is a design that can live on and can be implemented at a time that it can be more affordable. But I really feel like we're at a point where we've waited too long already, and the cost is the cost. I'm just anxious to move forward with the project and continue to make progress. So thank you, Mayor, for everything you've done to help with that. Okay. Mr. Tolman, this is item number 5, just so you're aware. Next item on our agenda is public comments. This is your opportunity to address the council on any item. Please state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
I'm Wilson Tolman. As I said, I live down by the Ogden River, and I moved into Ogden City over 25 years ago, fell in love with the city, and now have adopted it as my home. I also have used public transit for years in 3 different metropolitan areas, and I'm a firm supporter that because of the geographical problems that Weber County has with the narrow strip of land going to Salt Lake County, that it's a problem unless we use public transit and make it available for people who want to live in Ogden yet still have to be transported to Salt Lake City. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to address the council on any topic? Welcome back, Kerry.
I'm Kerry Wayne, Mary Slaterville. I'm here to address the mayor. I've asked you repeatedly to address the dust problem that we've had. I've sent you 2 emails concerning the wall of dust that we've had 4 weeks in a row. We know something needs to be done. You keep saying you're referring this to some department. I don't know what department you're referring it to, but something has to. You can't be immune from your own ordinances. You need to do something to make sure that we're not getting just buried in dust over across the street. You can see from the pictures that it's just a complete dust storm, just fills the entire block. And you need to do something about it. It's gotten worse. Like I say, as things dry out, it gets worse. We've asked Boyer to address it. We've asked you to address it. You hide behind your Boyer contract, do nothing. Again, I don't know if you remember, but in 2016, I presented you with a T-shirt. Nothing has changed. Nothing. Lies are the only basis for what goes on in Ogden, and you need to do something about it. There's no reason that you can't be a decent neighbor. You promised to meet with us. You won't do it. You promised to provide the schedule that Councilman Heyer said that you sent. We had that back in the first part of April. You could look out the window and see that it was not being followed. So I don't know why it took you so long to come up with that same schedule. Again, we're looking for a schedule for when you're going to meet with the citizens of Mary Slaterville, when you're going to come to those people who bared their soul to you and you said you felt so bad for. We want you to come out and do something. We want you to come out, meet with us, address the problems. 3 o'clock on Saturday, I got motorcycles screaming up and down the street. Who can I call? OPD takes 2.5 hours to come out. Boyer does nothing. You need to be responsible for your property. You can't hide behind Boyer. You're the owner of record. You need to do something. I don't care to come in here and repeatedly beg you to do something, anything. We don't get a thing. Like I said, Boyer promised they'd come over and talk to us about the landscape. Hasn't happened. They're already starting to plant trees along there in landscape. It's part of the reason why we have all the dust. They've been running equipment back and forth across there. No water trucks, no nothing. And I agree, you can't hide behind the drought because it has rained, so we do have something. But you need to stop this wall of dust burying us every week. You need to do something about the noise and the people trespassing on your property. And we need to have it done now. Not in a couple months, not September, not whenever. You need to act now. We've had 16 months of waiting for you to get off your duff and do something. So please do something for the people of Mary Slaterville because you've done nothing but rotten by them so far. Thank you.
Mr. Wayne, before you go, I'm not going to minimize your frustration because I know a fraction of what you've been through. We have rules of decorum in our chambers. I didn't stop you because I don't think you crossed them, but you were really close. So next time you come, if you need to take it out on me before we get going, I'll take some of the heat too, okay? It's true, but you can yell at me. I can do that. Okay. Anyone else care to address the council?
Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. I wanted to address a couple of things. First and foremost, let's revisit last year, where we were with the drought and where we were with fireworks and where we were with local small businesses having little stands, getting some extra money to put food on their table, trying to get by, being surprised. So I'd like y'all to be proactive as opposed to reactive and take a look at what we're going to do. We're in a drought. Causey and Pineview are at all-time lows, and I know that we have to wait for the fire marshal to do something, but I also know that we did something on our own last year, and I think we owe it to those families that sell fireworks to figure out what they're going to do and whether or not they're going to invest. And then also, for how are we going to handle our citizens, right? You know, because lots of kids love fireworks. I'm suggesting to you that we find a safe space and have a community party. And when I say safe space, I mean low fire risk. Lots of concrete, enclosed area, you know, use it as an opportunity to bring us all together to use the fireworks that we have without setting the mountains on fire. I mean, we are at dire straits, and let's talk about it before we actually get there. And press are writing articles. Listening to the work session today, I was really shocked at some comments about the airport with regards to how much time and effort we spend in mowing grass when we are in a drought. And the Portland airport has FAA approved no-mow low ground cover. There's a series that you have to go through. You have to get a biologist through FAA, and they will go, here's what's native, here's what's low drought. I mean, why are we spending money mowing grass when we can just simply select grass that uses less water and doesn't require mowing? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And there are certain restrictions on the actual tarmac where planes can see that there must be grass. A lot of airports are using artificial turf. That is a one and done. I don't see why we're not doing that. Since there is no comment in the RDA section, I would like to lift up again, actually a comment that Lisa Stout made, that she was surprised that the average tax parcel in Ogden is 410. Well, you know that development of low-cost housing that we built on Adams, well, yesterday, on Saturday, one sold within 24 hours for $500,000. We're continually putting money into a program and not changing the way that we're doing business. Yes, we have to have a spread of inventory, but we need to look at doing things differently so that there's smaller footprints, higher density along a transit line in areas that can handle it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to address council? Welcome back, Jason.
Yes, sir. Jason Reineveld, Ogden City. It sounds like, based on Angel's comment, that there's not going to be public comment for the RDA. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So that's kind of why I wanted to come tonight. I just wanted to make the comment that I don't believe Ogden City is a real estate development corporation. It is a city corporation that enforces laws, that manages ordinances, public utilities, public safety, and the like. And as a small real estate developer in Ogden that has dumped my entire life savings into Central Ogden to acquire land and build creative projects that provide good quality housing, competing with the city is detrimental to encouraging other guys like me from getting involved. Ogden City gives themselves incredible benefits through bureaucratic processes by greasing the skids inside of this building, whereas outsiders like me and my friends and other associates have to constantly be learning the ordinances and trying to go through the departments just to get developments approved. If you look at what the RDA owns in this town, they buy land and sit on it for years so they can put together a large piece of property and sell it to a big developer instead of letting small guys buy and do creative things that make cities cool. Instead, we get RDA using taxpayer funding to sit on land and not make a profit on it for all these years, and then wonder why Ogden City is the only real investor in this city. The Hostess project, the Rite Aid project, all these things, it seems like Ogden City is always involved. And your citizens can do better. Your citizens are better because we love this town too, and we don't need the government to be running all the development in this town. And it's incredibly frustrating, and I think it's why there's a lot of vacant buildings around. There's a lot of land sitting there just waiting to be aggregated so that we can come up with some big project. But we're not a big town. We don't need to add thousands and thousands of people. We can just build it out slowly and organically and sustainably instead of trying to have it all be running through the RDA or the economic development programs, because Ogden City has plenty of residents that are willing to make the investments to rehab properties, to build cool things, but we're trying to do it from the outside, and then Ogden City buying it makes the market untenable for small guys, because when a landowner knows that Ogden City is going to come and eventually buy it, they can keep the price high instead of making a deal with a small guy to do something creative. And we're, trying to do the best we can. And so I pay over $20,000 in property taxes every year to this city, and I'd like the opportunity to grow it organically and not see the RDA take all the opportunities for small investors.
Thanks, Jason.
Quick follow-up question, Jason. Just have you talked about this with anyone in the administration?
No, I've asked Ken Ritchie about it. That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
I want to clarify a point just for you. You asked about public comment. We don't have any general public comment in the RDA, but we do have 2 public hearings, one of which is related to the redevelopment agency budget, which I think is part of what you're getting at with that comment. So we will be accepting public comment for that budget item.
Okay, so thank you.
So I'm sorry if I misled you on my answer. Yeah, thanks. Okay, anyone else in the chambers care to address the council on any item? Okay, we'll go to online. Heath Sato.
Hey there. Thank you. Heath Sato, Ogden resident. Right on the heels of that last comment about how our city handles property. Last week, the mayor took a full 2 minutes and 23 seconds to essentially call me a liar rather than simply publicly answering the question I asked. And what I am getting is that nobody wants to be on record about the truth of this matter. All I am asking for is for one person in our city's government to make a publicly available statement as to why the Brown ice cream development deal was such a mess. The following statements are fact, not opinion or conjecture. One, there was one and only one developer informed of this property. Despite Brandon Cooper telling you, the RDA, that it was marketed widely and only one developer had any interest in the building. Number two, this one developer just so happened to be a friend of the mayor and one of the largest donors to the mayor's campaign. To be clear, despite the mayor's claims, I never said the mayor directed the sale in any way. I only stated that curious coincidence. Number three, Mr. Cooper gave multiple false statements when presenting this sale to the RDA for a vote, including presenting the building as half the size it actually is, false claims about the marketing, and false claim that only one developer could possibly be found that had any interest in the building. In regards to the number four, in regards to the presented value of the building, Mr. Cooper said, quote, the RDA was presented a number that we created for their comfort. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. Mr. Cooper also told me, number five, that with the control granted to him by the city, he could have on his own simply called the developer directly and asked if he wanted the building rather than the way it was handled. If that's a true statement, I feel this policy needs to be changed ASAP. Number six, Mr. Cooper also told me that the value presented in the presentation and other claims later found to be false were simply errors made by Janine Eller-Smith when assembling the presentation, that those errors were not his doing. Number seven, Mr. Cooper has given multiple statements that contradict one another, including telling me and the RDA that the building was marketed widely, then later stating that he had never even asked if the building was being marketed. He stated that the broker was working for the city without revealing that the city had no contract with that broker, allowing the broker to legally misrepresent the value of the building if he so chose. Again, all of the above statements are fact, not opinion. The cherry on top, of course, is that the administration secretly renewed this deal after it lapsed with the developer after all this came to light without notifying a single council member. Why? I'm not claiming anything illegal happened, and that's my issue. This is all perfectly fine under our current policies that appears to have no accountability. This isn't about Mr. Cooper, despite his name coming up so often. This is about accountability with our tax dollars. These properties belong to us, the citizens of Ogden, not the administration, and we deserve more accountability when you are choosing what to do with our property. All I'm asking for is a single clear statement as to where the cracks are in our system, so we can move forward to repair those flaws and remove these so-called errors from slipping under the radar again, potentially on much, much larger projects that are currently being granted millions of dollars to developers. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to address the council on any topic? Okay, seeing none. Comments from the mayor?
Sure. Just to address one issue, Mr. Wayne, I did get your email yesterday, and we have talked with BDO. They have water trucks on site now, and they're working through that. They had talked with the mayor. He wants to set up a meeting on June 29th at 6 p.m. to meet with residents. They don't want to wait another 2 weeks to discuss the design of the landscaping. The mayor responded, go ahead and start. And they thought if there'd be any changes to the landscape plan, he responded no. And so to say that we haven't done anything and haven't been involved in that is unfair. We've been working very hard with the mayor, Mayor Van Loen out there, and we'll continue to address that. And I, again, apologize for the inconvenience. I don't enjoy being in a public meeting and being told I don't do anything and having T-shirts pulled up and everything else. I find that offensive. We've done what we can with the contract and everything else, and we'll continue to do that and try to be good neighbors. So with that came out today. We got that email back today, and I'll just leave it at that. I think we've talked a lot about a lot of the other issues that have been presented, and we'll leave that up to fact and study and everything else. Like I mentioned last time, I didn't call anybody a liar, but what we do is it goes through a legal process. It goes through a finance process. It goes through an economic development process. It goes through all kinds of hands. And so to say that I have an opportunity to give sweetheart deals or anything else is, I think, a slap in the face to not only all of you, but all of the staff here that try to make things fair and transparent and everything else. And I'll stand on that.
Thank you. Comments from council?
Some of the meetings, I think something that was the catalyst for engaging in more conversation with our neighbors in Mary Slaterville was my intervention a while ago. I don't know if it's been a year ago or I don't know how long. And I really appreciate what happened at that time. And I've always appreciated citizens that come and talk to us and make us accountable for our actions and for our responsibility as elected officials. But I have also said repeatedly that the most important thing to me when this happens is to do it with kindness. I have said that repeatedly. I have said that repeatedly to Carrie. And I'm having a really hard time hearing Carrie come in here and berating the mayor. I also don't minimize in any way, shape, or form the difficulties and the challenges that he and his neighbors have been going through. But the only way that I believe in is kindness, even though I didn't live up to that ideal in the work session today. But that's a topic for another discussion. And so even though legally I don't know how close something was happening to intervene for stopping the violation of our decorum in these chambers, but morally, personally, I don't condone that and I don't support it. And I will not be a part of helping anybody that comes and berate us in this chamber. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, we've had quite a night. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn from this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Chaburka to adjourn. This is a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned from the city council meeting. Give the recorder a moment to reset for the RDA meeting. Okay, thanks, Tracy. Welcome, everybody, to the June 2022 Redevelopment Agency meeting. Let the roll call reflect that all board members are present. We'll start with our agenda with approval of minutes, the regular meeting of November 16th, 2021. Board Member Jaburka.
Yes, Chair, I've read those and found them to be accurate to my recollection.
Thank you. The regular meeting of December 14th and special meeting of December 21st, 2021. Board Member Heyer.
Yes, Chair, I have read those also, and they are accurate to the best of my recollection, and I would make a motion that we approve the minutes listed in the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member Ritchie to approve the minutes as presented. This is a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Next item on our agenda is public hearings. First item is fiscal year 2021-2022 budget amendment for the SWIFT environmental costs. Welcome back, Lisa.
Thank you, board members. The City Council recently approved a budget appropriation of just over $2 million to be transferred to the redevelopment agency. The budget action we are asking you to consider this evening is to appropriate that transfer into the redevelopment agency and to the the track line area for work done at the SWIFT site. It's okay. It's the same one. Again, I'll just remind you where we're at on the spending for the SWIFT site. Over the last several years, the city has appropriated $4.3 million, and the spending has nearly equaled that. The appropriation into the redevelopment agency would be for environmental work, work along the river for protection, and other remediation efforts at the SWIFT site. Any questions?
Questions for Lisa? Okay, thanks, Lisa. This is a public hearing, so if you care to address the board on this particular item, SWIFT environmental costs, please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Okay, seeing no hands on screen and no motion in the chambers, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
Motion by Board Member Ritchie, second by Board Member Heyer to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes. Back to the board for discussion or action.
Chair, motion to adopt proposed resolution 2022-4.
Second.
I have a motion by Board Member Ritchie, second by Board Member Heyer to adopt proposed resolution 2022-4. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Blair?
Aye.
Board Member Chaburga?
Aye.
Board Member Heyer?
Aye.
Board Member Ritchie?
Aye.
Board Member White?
Aye.
Vice Chair Lopez?
Aye.
Chair Nadolski?
Aye, that passes. Next item under our public hearings is fiscal year 2022-23 redevelopment agency budget. I believe we're joined by Glenn Symes. Welcome to the mic, Glenn.
Thank you. Thank you, board members. As you mentioned, this is your consideration of the FY23 RDA budget. And just for some background, currently there are 13 active project areas. You'll see a number of different names up there for the different project areas. That largely has to do with when the areas were approved and the state laws and the governing regulations at the time. So those are all the same basic ideas, but depending on the laws that were in place at the time, there may be some differences in the areas, but the names generally are refer to the time period in which they were approved. The current iteration of that is a second one down, second from the bottom, the community reinvestment areas. Those are the new areas. Anything that would be proposed would come under a community reinvestment area. Just by way of some additional background as far as revenues, the project areas generally get their revenue from either tax increment finance, and the graphic up there shows a general idea of how that works. BDO lease revenue, interagency and interfund transfers, a little bit of interest income, and occasionally some miscellaneous income. When we look at the year over year for the proposed budget, we can see an increase of about $3.3 million to the overall budget of $14 million, and the vast majority of that takes place within the districts themselves. So when we look at the district breakdown, you can see a number of those changes there. A lot of those changes and those increases are due to increases in property values and increases in increment finance that comes in. There are some that have increases due to BDO lease revenue. The biggest one is the bottom one there, the Continental, the Wonder Block area, and that has a proposed increase of $2.3 million. And a huge portion of that does come from BDO lease revenue. And if we take a look at that BDO lease revenue breakdown that is proposed to go to the RDA, you can see those top three lines are all Continental. The second two of those top three, that is some debt service. That top line, that $2.9 million, that is broken into two categories. So about $600,000 for some capital outlay for some upcoming work. This is different than what you had talked about in the work session with the money, the pre-development money going to JF Capital. And then $1.6 million is proposed to be reserved for payment of possible future bond payments. A lot of those other line items are debt service or other obligations within those districts, as well as the $1 million for the Quality Neighborhoods funding, which by ordinance gets transferred every year as part of the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative. So some upcoming activity with the RDA. As we've talked about, as we've mentioned, there are some areas that are upcoming that will be proposed, including the Capitol Square area, which is the Rite Aid site that you see there, Union Station, Gibson Grove, and the 5 Points, among some others that have been talked about. And then some additional upcoming activity is the ongoing pre-development work, as we mentioned, Union Station and Wonder Block, infill development, and the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative, and debt service. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. If there's something I can't answer, I may ask for an assist on any specific details. So.
Thank you, Glenn. Any questions for Mr. Symes? Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.
Okay, this too is a public hearing. If anybody cares to address the board on this item, the redevelopment agency budget of fiscal year 2022 and 2023, this is your opportunity. Please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Jason Reinville, Ogden City. I don't know everything about the RDA. It sure seems like the BDO is being treated like a slush fund that, and I know how much leases are going up these days. And so it seems like it's a really nice thing to have. But I would ask as a resident, if we could potentially see some of that, cut down on our taxes or maybe alleviate the property tax raise that's being proposed. And as a developer myself, if Ogden is such a great place to develop and invest in, and it's so easy to do business here, why do we have to spend all this money to get people to come in? And I understand the Swift Building is maybe a exception where nobody's willing to pay that kind of money to develop. But there, my office is just up from 24th, that Rite Aid block. I know the 550 24th Street area. I'd love to do that. And so why does Ogden City have to dump money in for pre-investment when there's tons of capital out there right now? The federal government's printing money like it's going out of style, trillions. So I mean, why does Ogden City have to use our income? Which I think BDO is great. I disagree with Ogden City owning investment property, but it's done and it's generating a profit, which is cool. But why don't we see a benefit from it? Because we're not approving all these projects that is our money. And I think it's interesting that it's just being used as kind of a slush fund. And it's a massive, massive project that I'm sure generates a ton of money. But as a citizen, it's just really hard to understand these budgets, where all this money's coming from. Why do we continually hire people? We have 660 people working at this city. The next closest city is like 550, I think Sandy. Layton has 345. Most other cities are between 345 and 450. And we got people on the payroll for an extra 100, 200 people. They have time to go around and inspect all rental properties without any cause, to go through every single rental property in this city, to drive around and harass citizens that are redoing their front yard. It's like we have way too much manpower, and it's nothing against these individuals who are trying to feed their families, but we have a 2% unemployment rate in Weber County. I think they can probably find jobs somewhere else if they had to go to a different job. And now we're proposing 14% payroll increase for most of the people in Ogden, and nobody's getting 14% raises. And I know inflation's bad, but we're all trying to keep up. And so to go and just raise our property taxes and get federal money, well, where's that money going to come from in the future? And so I think I know there's some frustration here, but with the RDA in particular, it's not a mandate for Ogden City as a corporation to spend this money on behalf of the Ogden citizens. They're enforcing the laws and policing the streets and providing fire protection utilities, but that's not something that we have to do. So maybe we could slow roll it for a little while and give some money back and maybe not lower or raise property taxes.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. I'm sorry, was it Jace or Jason?
Jason.
Jace. Jason?
Jace.
Oh,
Jace.
it's Jace. Jace.
Jace?
It's Chase.
Not bad.
I had lunch a couple of weeks ago with David Damshin. And if you don't know who David Damshin is, he was the Utah State Treasurer for 12 years, and he's now the CEO of Utah Housing Corporation. And the topic of our lunch was we have to do things differently. We cannot continue doing the same things. And he is looking to change some things with how funds are accessed at Utah Housing Corporation. And to Jace's point about supporting smaller developers, there is something for you, but it's a little more complicated with regards to accessing federal tax credits. And I suggest you talk to Utah Housing Corporation. They already have a program that allows smaller developers to work within the system to access some of those, because it's very complicated to get low-income tax house credits. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Utah Housing Corporation already has that. But what we do have to reinvent is what we're doing. We're doing the same thing over and over. And I have been talking to you about housing since, I moved here in 2018. 2018, I have been leading with that, and we're not doing anything differently. We are continuing to do the same thing over and over and over, and we need to be innovative as a city and figure out how we are going to allow multiple points for a housing plan. And while I was at that special meeting at the firehouse when it was presented, our housing plan, it is not a housing plan. It is a combination of a bunch of different things of, well, we're kind of handling it here. We're kind of handling it here. A real plan has, this is how many homes over $700,000 we want built, and what we have and what we're lacking. And here's the middle, that what we have and what we're lacking. And how are we going to remove regulation to incentivize folks to build here? How are we going to speed planning through? I mean, Texas has a shot clock of 90 days. I know that we're talking about removing some of those things, but it is not enough. The way we sell housing is something that I am not the person who invented it, and everybody says it. We have to build more and faster. And the only way we're going to do that is to look at what we're doing and figure out how we can change our zoning to accommodate smaller units, more of them in different places. So you're going to vote this in, and you have to vote this in, but why are you continuing to do the same thing over and over? Because we're not getting the results we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the chambers care to address the board on this item? Okay. Online is Heath Sato.
Thank you, Heath Soto, Ogden resident. I can't support continuing this funding of the RDA until it becomes a less opaque process that is controlled by more than one person. I will note in the mayor's comments that he did not reject a single one of the facts I stated as false. He once again just spoke to how offended he is about me, about Marriott Slaterville, about everything. He's always offended about everything. He never actually addresses the issue. And I want to hear from the council what policy changes are going to be made to make the process less opaque. And I understand, I'm tired of being mansplained by the mayor about how many departments things have to go through, because every department is depending on the previous department giving it accurate information. The one issue I have picked, because it was blatantly obvious, was the Brown Ice Cream Building. And I've stuck with it because I know what happens every time something happens. They just deny and ignore and until it just goes away. And I'm not going to let this one just go away. I'm sick of watching that happen. I want to see real policy changes, not just some lip service to, oh, I'll do better. It's unacceptable. This is our city. It's not the administration city. It's not any one department city. It is our city, and we all have a right to know how developments are happening, how our money's being spent, who is picking these things, and we need less opacity. Please. Thank you.
Anyone else care to address the board on this item?
Back in the years, I remember the Secretary of Defense came.
Can you state your name? Can you state your name before you start it? Sorry.
Wilson Tolman.
Thank you, Wilson.
Secretary of Defense came to Hill Air Force Base and asked them to figure out how to do things better and less expensive. And of course, they went back to his department and said, we can't do it without spending more money. And so he took away their budgets. We need to, as citizens, to do the same thing. Rainwater, snow is not a utility. I can't turn it on or off. It's a property tax. But yet it's hidden in as a utility. Also, I'm sure that our founding fathers would not be very excited about us accepting double taxation. Spending we pay taxes when we earn our money, and we pay taxes when we spend it. Those things have to be stopped. The people can do it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, everyone. Nicholas Sotillo again. I've heard it said a couple times this evening that you've got to pass it, you've got to do it, and I guess I'm just encouraging all to consider not some of these resolutions, because that's why you're here. You don't have to pass a lot of these things. You have the ability to send it back and say, no, what's being proposed is not acceptable to the taxpayer. I've also heard it said a couple times, particularly about the SWIFT project, that but also other projects. No matter what it takes, right? We'll do it. And if there's a moral imperative behind some of these projects, I understand that. But it sounds really good to say we'll do whatever it takes. But it's kind of an irresponsible thing to say. These resources are finite. They come out of our income and our purchases. And so I signing a blank check in the name of this project or that project is not a heroic thing to do. It's an irresponsible thing to do. And so having limits or project plans in place to know at what point you're going to stop or what the whole picture looks like before you get started, that's just responsible. And so I would just encourage you all, especially when you have objections here from residents, to consider voting no and saying we're not going to pass this until we have a more responsible and comprehensive plan going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing no motion, I'll entertain a motion.
Chair, I'd make a public hearing on this item.
Second.
We have a motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member Chaburka to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? The hearing is closed.
Chair, it would maybe be well if our Economic Development Director would get up and explain as best you can in simple terms how RDAs actually benefit the city. I think there's a sense that perhaps they cost us when and if you could kind of you had that good graphic, it was good, but it was up there really a short time. Is that something you could feel good about doing right now?
You bet. In general, tax increment is generated 3 minutes. I'll take less, maybe. Tax increment is generated between the value of a property at an arbitrary date that the project area is set,
versus the post-development valuation. And so it's meant under state law to induce development that otherwise would not happen but for that kind of inducement. It served Ogden City well over the last number of decades that we've had it. It serves 29 other agencies in the state very well. It's generally confined to the properties that are being invested in. So the increment is generated by those individuals who are making the valuation. It essentially becomes a property tax rebate in its simplest form. And so for you two gentlemen, I don't think we've ever met, but I'd be happy to meet you after the meeting, and I'd give you my card, and we can have a conversation about this and the other good points that you've brought up. I'll be happy to sit down with you for as long as you need.
That's perfect. Thank you. This slide is it's pretty simple, but and I'd kind of like to, I've been working in the city government for a long time on planning commission as well as city council. And that property, the Rite Aid property that we're calling it now, Capitol Square, I guess actually what we're calling it now.
Right.
Has had, I don't know if I have enough fingers and toes to tell you the number of developers that have looked at it and have walked away without this type of an incentive. And so I conclude that it just would never have developed had it not been for an RDA with tax increment funding that was going to support it. After all of the impediments are mitigated, you'd probably be really happy to walk in, and so would anybody else. But we've got to. But the cost of the project has to be those, mitigating those impediments, and that's the reason we have RDAs. We don't do it just because we think it's fun. It's not. It's complicated, and it's but we do it because we're a city that's pretty old, and we've got a lot of areas that need redeveloping. And you compare that with greenfields somewhere, developers are just not interested. So I think we've got to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
You bet. Any other questions?
No, that was just me getting up on my high horse, I guess. But
I have a comment too, if I may, Chair.
Please.
I really appreciate you coming and participating in the meeting. I've had lots of conversations with people that have similar perspective, and I definitely had a lot of probably negative thoughts about the RDA or how Ogden City was going about its business before I got in this position. And that's not always been, I don't always agree with everything that we're doing, but I've definitely seen the benefit to these kinds of properties. And so, I'd be happy to meet and chat with you a little bit too more about how kind of my perspective has changed a little bit about it. Definitely the question when I first joined was like, when will enough be enough? When will we be done doing these areas, and then developers will come in and do it themselves? I think that's what a lot of constituents often ask. And so I think almost every time Brandon brings a new project forward, I say, so is this the last one, or when's the next one, or, et cetera. We have kind of a running joke about that. But I also think that, some of these conversations are just really good to get involved, because we do have a lot of conversations in the work session leading up to this. Some of these projects have started maybe back in Bart's time, when he first started on the council, sorry, a long time ago, and it takes a long time for them to come across. But, and so I think that it's really helpful to kind of understand all the nuances of that. And we do actually have, for each one of the projects, it's very specific how much money we're going to be willing to invest, maybe how much time, et cetera. So there's a lot of details that go into each project area. And then the other point I just wanted to mention is, I definitely have had conversations with people and thought, we can just move money from one bucket that we have at the city to another, and it would work that way. But a lot of our different accounts are really reserved for particular kinds of use. And so with the BDO revenue, the administration and council have really made a philosophical decision, which I totally stand behind. We don't use the funds for ongoing costs, so we would never use those funds for for employee increases in their salaries, right? It's only for one-time costs. So just wanted to clarify a couple of those things, but I'd be happy to chat more too about it.
As would I. I'd love to chat with you guys a little bit after the meeting if you've got a minute.
Board member Chaburka also speaks as though she has as much experience on the board as board member Blair.
He doesn't even have a gray hair. I was just looking.
I know.
I don't see any.
He looks the most like his picture on the wall than any of us.
Yeah.
Just want to echo the comments. Thank you for coming in, sharing your thoughts, and thank you, Brandon, for your offer to talk with them. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment? Okay. Your turn.
You're ready for motion on this item?
Yes, sir.
Then, Chair, I'd like to propose that we adopt Resolution 2022-2.
I know. Second. Sing.
We have a motion by board member Heyer, second by board member Blair, to adopt proposed resolution 2022-2. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Chaburka?
Aye.
Board Member Heyer?
Aye.
Board Member Ritchie?
Aye.
Board Member White?
Aye.
Board Member Blair?
Aye.
Vice Chair Lopez?
Aye.
Chair Nadolski?
Aye. That passes. I'll just say for those that are watching, there is an abnormal aggregate of impressive facial hair on this side of the room over here. But beyond just being impressed with the facial hair in second row, I've been impressed with your comments. I don't want you to leave here thinking what you said wasn't heard. I called myself fiscal conservative earlier. I think I misstated that. Now it's all relative, it seems. Not as fiscally conservative, perhaps, as you guys are. But some of the points you made are very salient, and philosophically, I agree with them. I think that my peers have explained the RDA and their philosophy on it. I generally agree with it, but I think that there is a time and a place for the RDA. I think there's a time and a place that's not for the RDA. And I think that I am anxious for the time, and I don't know when that time is. If it's now, tell me. I want it to be where the small business and any business comes to Ogden on its own without a intervention or a need or facilitation from the RDA. We have operated for a long time where the city wasn't in that point. It just wasn't. We just had so much need, and we had no developers flocking to us. It just was. And the BDO saved our bacon, honestly. I don't see it as a slush fund. I see it as a savior for many, many of the needs that we have had in this community. And so I do hope there comes a time where we don't have to use the RDA the way that we do to incentivize things. But as a fiscal conservative, I do believe in the fiscal principles of making sure that we cover one-time expenses with one-time revenues. So I do hope there's more we can do for small businesses in this city, because you guys are small business owners, at least Jace is, and I apologize for getting your name wrong. But Kim Bouchard is one of the anchor small businesses in this city and has been for a long time. So your contributions are respected and appreciated, and so are your comments, and so is your facial hair. Nicely done, gentlemen. Okay. Comments from the executive director.
Sure, just quickly, I would echo the comments. We, I think, all appreciate that. And there's a reason why state law was set up for a redevelopment agency instead of just a development agency. Because when you're a built-out community was one of the first in the state to go in and reclaim that and just to make it developable and provide bare ground that's safe and reasonable and you can have expectations for, there's some cost that goes into that. That's why state law was set up for older communities to go in and create a developable environment. Otherwise, we wouldn't have anything going on, because you can't afford to go in and scrape all the buildings and put in new infrastructure and everything else, versus what they're doing, say, for example, Farmington Station, where you've got hundreds of acres of alfalfa fields that are really easy to go in and do. It's much more difficult, and that's why the state set the law up for redevelopment agencies to come in and to help work through some of that. So I've appreciated your comments too. I understand it's dynamic and difficult. I think Mr. Cooper said we have 24 different cities that participate in redevelopment agencies right now. 20. It's that's the state law that was set up, and we try to do as much as we can with the tools that we're given, and this is one of the tools. But I do appreciate you all being here, and Brandon, I appreciate you meeting with these gentlemen after and helping explain some of what we're trying to do and everything else. I also wanted to say at the end, I appreciate Councilmember Lopez's comments, although he's gone now, but I want to call him out publicly. I do believe that kindness counts. And one of the things I'm the most proud of, that anybody that's heard me speak in other environments and talk about Ogden and be the chief cheerleader of Ogden, is that we've been recognized as one of the most charitable communities in the United States of America when it comes to volunteer hours given and charitable donations given. That's something I'm really proud of. That's something I'll continue to be really proud of. And I think if we can work collaboratively with that kind of a spirit, we can get a lot done. And I think that matters. And I wanted to just thank Councilmember Lopez for his comments earlier. Now you don't know what I'm saying, so you get to be held cold, and I'll end my comments there.
Thanks. Man, I wish he was here to hear how explosive those comments were. It's awkward that he can't defend himself in his honor. It wasn't here. It's fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. Comments from board members.
Chair, I'd like to kind of chime in a little bit. The housing crisis that we find ourselves in, it's not just Ogden that finds ourselves here. It is, it's a huge problem everywhere, particularly along the Wasatch Front, which is what I'm probably the most concerned with. And to say that we haven't done anything different is probably not entirely true. We received a report from our planning director a few months ago that over the past 2 years, there have been nearly 4,000 units applied to be built in a high density type of environment. In other words, a multi-housing unit. Over that same period of time, which historically we'd always been building single family homes on single family lots in an R1 zone, there have been 11 of those. So 11 compared to 4,000 I think is a little bit of a difference over what we have done historically. That seems to be all that we get developers petitioning to do, is upzone and then build townhomes or apartment buildings or whatever fits that groove right there. And we're doing it as much as we can in Ogden. Ogden being a largely built out community, we cannot solve this problem on our own. It must be solved in a countywide or regional type of an approach. And even that is not going to solve it. It'll certainly help it here. And there is a thrust to organize a countywide housing master plan so that it will help to, and it will be informed by the Wasatch Choice Vision 2050 survey that was done a few years ago that thousands of people participated in, reacting to the population numbers that we expect to see by 2050, which will be doubling the population that we had in 2000. Was it 2000? Is that where it came from? So 30 years, roughly 30 years, going to double. That's a lot of houses. That's a lot of housing units, and so it's important that we all kind of get our shoulders into this problem. It's going to require some of these communities around us to allow higher densities than they currently do, or because Ogden cannot do it. Ogden, it just can't be done here by ourselves. We've got to have help. And so there is that thrust that's happening. And I just want you to know that we're not oblivious to the housing problem. We're not ostriches. We didn't stick our head in the sand. We're really working on it. So But thank you for your support.
Thanks. You might not be an ostrich, but thank you. Anybody else?
I have a quick comment, if that's okay.
Mhm.
I just wanted to address Heath's comments about the transparency issue, because I totally agree. I think we want to make the process more transparent, and I think Brandon's been working on that to make that a possibility. And I would love to see it more easier for people to access information like that RFP, and who applied and those kinds of things. So I think that only makes it easier for others to get involved in the process, no matter what size organization you have. So I'm totally for that.
Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn from this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member Lopez to adjourn. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Gives recorder a moment to reset for the Municipal Building Authority meeting. Thanks, Tracy. Welcome, everybody, to the June 14th, 2022 Municipal Building Authority meeting. Let the roll call reflect that all trustees are present, including Trustee Blair. It sounds like a racehorse, so I like saying that. Sorry.
I'm here.
First item on the agenda is public hearings, fiscal year 2022-23 Municipal Building Authority budget. Glenn Symes, Deputy Director of Ogden City Council.
Thank you very much. Well, I think with this budget, the setup might actually take longer than the actual delivery of the budget information. So just as some background on this budget, there were a couple of items that used to be in the MBA budget that are no longer in the budget. So you may be used to seeing those in there, but they are no longer in there. So the first one is the Lindquist Field bond that was refunded a couple of years ago. So that's no longer part of the budget. And the second one is a Public Works Facility bond, and that one matured just about this time last year. So that is also no longer part of the MBA budget. So with that long setup, the budget for the MBA for FY23 is $5,000, and that's in the professional and technical account, and that would pay for any financial reporting that needs to take place. Any questions for me?
Questions for Mr. Symes?
I've asked every year, maybe we'll just one more time. Why don't we pay this off and let this Municipal Building Authority budget go away? Just for the record, not that I don't know. But go ahead, tell us.
Yeah, this was talked about in the work session. I think the answer, and maybe some other folks can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's just to keep it on the books in case we want to use it in the future for some of these same types of projects. So
okay.
Just easier to keep it there rather than get rid of it and recreate it if we want it in the future.
Thanks. That's all I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trustee Heyer.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Okay. This is a public hearing. If you care to address the authority on this item, please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. I appreciate Trustee Heyer. Trustee Heyer's frugality in making sure that we want to cut and snip every last little thing that we can and we should, because we need to be doing more of that. This particular thing, government is big, slow. And if we didn't invest the $5,000 to keep this open, should we want to utilize this agency for a project, it's going to cost us more in the long run. It's going to be really hard. And the last thing with a very fluid federal economy and grants and ARP money, I would hate for us to be caught behind the 8 ball, not being able to move very quickly when an opportunity presents itself. So in this particular instance, I am okay with spending $5,000 for an agency that isn't being completely utilized at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for the record, it's just keeping the $5 in there. We're not actually spending any money.
There might be
a little bit. Okay.
Anybody else care to address the authority.
Jace Reineveld, Ogden City. I just want thanks for everything. I do have to head out. My wife's putting my daughter down, and I got some work to get done by 10 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. So I do appreciate the insight. I do have to admit that I philosophically disagree with the amount of money that government from the state, local, federal level is. I think it's going to be a burden that my daughter and her children will not be able to bear. So I do understand, and I have tried to learn, and I appreciate all the knowledge that sits here. But it's more of a philosophical thing, and I just wanted to say it. So thank you, and have a great night.
Thank you, JC, too.
Thanks, Jace.
Good man. Okay, anyone else? Thanks, Brandon. Okay, seeing no more motion.
I'd make a motion that we close the public hearing on this item.
Second. It was a tie, so I'm going to go with the one I want. We have a motion by Trustee Heyer, second by Trustee Blair to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's closed. I've never made the recorder laugh in public, so I've accomplished something.
Chair, I make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2022-1.
Second. Thank you. Motion by Trustee Heyer, second by Trustee Blair to adopt proposed Resolution 2022-1. This is a roll call vote.
Trustee Blair.
I like the sound of it. Aye.
Trustee Chaburka.
Aye.
Trustee Heyer.
Aye.
Trustee Ritchie.
Aye.
Trustee White.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye, that passes. Comments from the president.
I like the sound of that.
I'll just add this. It's always my favorite because my daughter was president of Ogden High, and she held that over me forever. So this is the only meeting I ever get where I have a title equal to hers, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you very much. It's been a long night, and appreciate all your work.
Thank you, Mr. President. Comments from trustees. No comments. This comment I'm about to make might get lost in the shuffle, and I'm fine with that. I just hope that it doesn't get lost on you guys. We've had a long night. I'm often asked if I'm going to run for re-election or if I'm going to run for another position, and my answer is almost always no. And it's because of the way I have felt tonight. And I just want to apologize for any contributions that I have made. If any of you feel anything like I feel right now, because the conflict is exhausting and my stomach is sick. And I don't like being here because of the way it makes me feel. So I will do my best to do better. I don't feel like I'm at my best when I'm here. And I feel like it has a lot to do with the culture that we have in this building and in this institution that is good, but can always be better. So I don't make that comment to be critical of anybody or anything. I love you guys. And I don't have any hate or anger with anybody. I just want to call out the way that I feel, and I don't want to feel this way every Tuesday. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Heyer, second by Trustee Jaberka to adjourn. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.